Headshot. Double kill.
Hello, I'm Chris, and today I'm going to be talking about a series of video games that are very near and dear to my heart, whilst focusing especially on my favourite game of said series, Unreal Tournament 2004. Releasing out onto the PC gaming scene an eye-watering 23 years ago on the 30th of November 1999, Unreal Tournament was absolutely one of the pioneers in the first-person shooter genre of video games. As I wouldn't have even been 5 years old at the time, needless to say, it would take a little while until I'd be able to experience these games for myself. The circumstances under which I came upon the Unreal Tournament series stick with me quite firmly. It clings on to the dusted recesses of my otherwise laughable memory to a far greater degree than had I simply stumbled upon a boxed copy in the local game store, or perhaps in more recent times found it in a Steam sale. No, the circumstances under which I came upon the Unreal Tournament series actually remain with me because it's one of my favourite memories of an otherwise unremarkable and underwhelming period of my life. I discovered Unreal Tournament whilst attending an activities day in my old comprehensive school. Anyone else remember those? For those who don't, an activities day basically constituted the very last day of a school year, falling annually sometime throughout the middle of June. Weeks in advance, students would be presented with the option of several different activities, usually involving some kind of field trip, such as Alton Towers or Oakwood Park. For whatever reason, I rarely found myself partaking in these trips away. For the small number of students, such as myself, that were left over in the school, there was no real agency. You just sort of had to look around, stumble upon various bits and bobs of things to do that certain teachers may or may not be doing or hosting. One classroom in the chemistry block was showing X-Men 3 at one point. A welcome break from the umpteenth screening of the first hour of Forrest Gump, which was an absolute staple of a mid-2000s substitute teacher's curriculum. On this particular activities day, I wandered the halls of my school aimlessly. You have to wonder what the point of even having to go to school on those days even was. Why not just let the poor children start their summer early? Perhaps it was just an incentive to convince parents to pay for the handful of school-funded trips. My comprehensive school was constructed in the 1970s, not as a singular large unit, but as a decentralized complex with multiple different buildings, each with their own subjects grouped together. I recall that I was having a look for something to do in the computer building, which also housed the main entrance and reception. I wandered the halls of that block for a while, going around boldly, in my attempts to find any other signs of life. Finally, from down a corridor, I could just about hear a flurry of some excitable activity behind a closed door. Gingerly, I pushed the door open and slowly stepped inside. I had unconsciously stumbled into my first LAN party. There was a sizable group of boys in there, I want to say sixth formers, all huddled around their respective PCs playing something that I certainly wasn't familiar with. On the school computers, you were lucky if you were able to find Newgrounds or Miniclip unblocked, so what the heck were they doing in here? Sadly, I can't quite remember the initial exchange of words upon entering this most unreal of sanctums, but before I knew it, one of the assembled LAN party enjoyers came up to me and conspiratorially handed me a USB drive before sitting me down by a computer and installing Unreal Tournament onto it for me. The first time that I'd ever been able to play a first-person shooter of any description was on this occasion, playing Unreal Tournament handed to me by a cool old student armed only with a USB drive and a gaggle of friends to start a LAN party with. I loaded it up, and that first map that I played is burned into my memory. It was DMK Galleon, a pirate ship themed level which for some reason didn't make it into Unreal Tournament 2004, much to my dismay. If I recall, I was actually allowed to keep that particular USB stick, and you can absolutely bet that I installed that game on every other school computer and personal device that I was able to over the subsequent years. I think that this story will stick with me forever because, surprise, surprise, being an introverted child whilst also being in the midst of an unusually religious upbringing meant that I was not the most popular kid in school. It was such a nice feeling and, frankly, an alien concept to instantly get accepted somewhere and swept up for the ride. I don't know who those guys were. Being sixth formers on the last day of school all but guaranteed I would never see them again. I don't remember their faces, just that most of them sported that scene kid / emo haircut that was very popular at the time. Despite this, I do still think about them every now and again. LAN parties are a great unifier, and I truly hope that they'll continue to survive in one form or another. Regardless, this is the instance that kicked off my enduring love for Unreal Tournament, as well as many other old-school arena shooters in general. I'll be focusing on Unreal Tournament 2004 for this review, as having played every game in the trilogy, I do think it still stands as the de facto Unreal Tournament experience. Releasing in March 16th, 2004 and March 19th, 2004 in North America and Europe respectively, Unreal Tournament 2004 continued the trailblazing path set forth by its predecessor, further refining and perfecting the arena shooter genre. This was before a time of preset loadouts customization. In Unreal Tournament, your arsenal is determined purely by how quickly you can race towards the various weapon spawns that generously and invitingly litter every lovingly crafted arena of brutal slaughter. It's a formula that dates back to the likes of Unreal Tournament 1, Quake, or the original Wolfenstein and Doom games, for some more single-player examples, but still lives on today. Just look at Halo. Unreal Tournament 2004 is the first-person shooter experience at its most perfect, distilled, and balanced. Each of the game's many levels boasts not only horizontal but vertical freedom, meaning that you can shoot at or get shot from nearly every conceivable direction you can think of, with perhaps one or two more on top of that. Upon loading up Unreal Tournament 2004, you are presented with several different options to tailor your gameplay experience from the main menu. Single player provides the sort of narrative campaign that accompanies the otherwise non-contextual bloodshed that seeps from every moment that Unreal Tournament brings to the table. Honestly, the story is fine and not terribly exciting. It provides a way for players to be guided through every gameplay mode available, such as Capture the Flag, Team Deathmatch, and Assault, as some examples. The real benefit of the single-player campaign is that you can select your own teammates and watch them flourish, or just let you down completely. I'm looking at you, Jacob with a K. No, the true bulk of the gameplay is to be found under instant action. This is where Unreal Tournament 2004 generously provides the player with so many options to fine-tune and customize their gaming experience. Not only can you freely choose between 11 different game modes, but several dozen mutations, which each mix up the action in many different ways, some with a more radical impact than others. My personal favourite is Instagib. In this mode, the player and their opponents have but one gun apiece. It's a precision weapon, a railgun of sorts, and upon connecting with its target, it kills them immediately. This simple change of inventory transforms Unreal Tournament 2004 into a different game entirely, much the same way that SWAT completely alters the traditional Halo experience. It's the ultimate test of your twitch reflexes, as well as your ability to bounce around the map like Bugs Bunny, cartoonishly dodging every single projectile fired from your Elmer Fudd-esque pursuers. Of course, unlike that wascally wabbit, you can and should shoot back. Regardless, once the player has selected their game mode and map of choice, they'll be dropped into the action. The moment-to-moment gameplay of Unreal Tournament 2004 is quite like most arena shooters of its type. Upon the starting of a round, the player spawns in with naught but the texture on their back and a gun that could literally only tickle a small, not particularly bulletproof rodent. In order to actually find a weapon capable of defending oneself in the manner that one tends to in these first-person shooters, each round of Unreal Tournament 2004 quickly becomes a scavenger hunt, as players desperately attempt to locate any weapon that they could actually do any damage with. Relevantly, I think, William Shakespeare once wrote that all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. Now, okay, I'm no historian, but I'm fairly sure that 16th century English playwright William Shakespeare did not, in fact, play 21st century epic games' epic shooter Unreal Tournament 2004. But it's funny just how utterly relevant this particular line turned out to be to a game that wouldn't come out until literally 400 years and several technological revolutions later. Each arena in Unreal Tournament 2004 presents itself as the stage, the theatre of violence, for the production that you, the player, are about to star in. Entrances present themselves as the various spawn points in which you and your co-stars will be materialising. Exits present themselves typically as anything ranging from a rocket to the face or a well-timed snipe to the head. Each time you pick up one of the many types of weapons to be found across the arena, you undertake a different role. You put on a different hat. Found a sniper? Better hang back at the end of long corridors and take well-aimed pot shots. Found a flat cannon? You gotta start running at people. Get up all in their faces and see the whites of their eyes before finally pulling the trigger. Now, you may believe that I'm reaching a little, and that's okay. I most definitely am. But consider that Unreal Tournament 2004 itself is meant to be about some kind of televised performance, a blood sport for the hypothetical masses of its universe to watch the carnage, a stage production, if you will. The thing is, I've been to the Globe Theatre. It's not the real one, of course. It's actually the third Globe Theatre to be built in London. The first Globe Theatre was actually accidentally burned down due to a fluff-up with Tudor-era pyrotechnics. The second Globe Theatre, upon being rebuilt with a significantly less flammable roof made of thatch, was closed by the Puritans because Puritans ruin everything. Finally, the Globe Theatre that currently stands oh so magnificently by the Thames River in London today was constructed in the 1990s, rounding out a trilogy of theatres that began during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I and ended during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. Having been to this lovingly reconstructed version of the Globe, all I can say is that, scaled properly, it has all the depth, verticality and interesting design choices of a fantastic Unreal Tournament 2004 level. Get on that, modding community. Thankfully, even without talking about mods, Unreal Tournament 2004 already provides the complete package in terms of level design and variety, shipping with dozens upon dozens of interesting action-packed map designs. Some personal favourites of mine are Capture the Flag Moondragon, Capture the Flag Face Classic, Deathmatch Corrugation, Deathmatch Morpheus 3, and Deathmatch Rankin. To be honest, that list could go on, and upon my scouring the map lists to pick out these for this section, I realised that over the countless hours that I've played Unreal Tournament 2004, I've perhaps only played around 30 to 40% of the maps on offer. I've clearly got to check my map playlists more often. Returning to the earlier theme of the deadly scavenger hunt, in which the player will attempt to reach the bigger, deadlier guns faster, weaponry isn't the only thing to be found dotted around each of Unreal Tournament 2004's exhaustive list of levels. Additionally, there are many health packs, armor kits, and adrenaline pills to be picked up. Health and armor works as you may expect it to, have you played any of these old school shooters before. Having a greater amount of health means that you can take a greater number of bullets, flak shells, or rockets to the face, with armor stacking on top of that, increasing your health pool further and increasing the amount of damage that you can take. Adrenaline is something that's a little bit more unique to Unreal Tournament 2004, and a fantastic addition at that. I'm going to talk a little bit about adrenaline now because honestly it's rather a relatable system. You see, earlier this year, as of time of writing, I broke my elbow. I wish I could say I achieved such a feat in some spectacular Herculean manner, such as during a sparring session in my weekly kung fu class, or perhaps by leaping into traffic to save a kitten or a puppy or something. You know, something for the bards to write about and perform in Deathmatch Globe Theatre. No, I in fact broke my elbow via falling off a penny board. A penny board is a type of smaller skateboard that I had only taken out 1 or 2 times prior to that, thus beginning and ending my fleeting career as a budding Tony Hawk within the space of about 2 weeks. You see, I was on a smooth concrete trail through a forest that runs nearby my house, a trail that winds and weaves and raises and lowers, thankfully free of any nearby traffic, thus leading me to believe that it was A, safe, and B, a skateboarder's paradise, yo. As you can probably imagine, considering the circumstances under which I introduced this anecdote, I was incorrect. I realised that I was going downhill a little faster than I probably should be going downhill, and attempted to bail off safely, as I already had a number of times before. Of course, things didn't go quite according to plan. I jumped off, my right foot landing firmly on the ground. My left foot, however, had a very different notion about how this story was going to go. My left foot, on its way to the ground, caught the board, shooting it forwards and flipping me into the air. I'll be honest, for a moment there, I flew. As I soared through the air, in a distinctly more horizontal manner than I tend to be comfortable with when there isn't some kind of bed or sofa underneath me, I had a good long second or two to come to the realisation that heck, I probably wasn't about to enjoy the next few moments. I came down hard, but thankfully there was a particularly thorny hedge which broke most of my fall. My right arm and both legs were stung profusely but were otherwise totally fine despite the superficial damage. My left arm, not so much. Approximately 3/4 of my body had possessed the good sense to actually land into the nearby shrubbery, avoiding the cold, unforgiving concrete path. Sadly, my left arm and elbow in particular had missed the memo. I came down hard on my left elbow, on said path, sending a spasm up my arm, much like it does upon whacking one's funny bone. This is where my adrenaline kicked in. Despite being literally thrown a few meters, coming down hard and breaking my elbow, I got up immediately and shook myself off. After the initial relief of realizing that nobody had been around to see it, I picked up my skateboard and walked to the local supermarket. Once there, I did my shopping. I think it was just an energy drink and a tiramisu, if I recall correctly. All the while, my arm felt a little numb, but I figured I just banged the humerus bone rather hard, which I had, and that it would wear off shortly. It wasn't until I'd gotten home around 20 minutes later that the adrenaline wore off, and my arm really started to raise objections. So, much in the same way that my own adrenaline gave me the special ability to complete a supermarket trip whilst nursing a freshly broken elbow, the adrenaline pills in Unreal Tournament 2004 bestow special abilities upon the player too. Each time you collect a pill from the floor or kill an opponent, you get an additional +2 to your adrenaline count. Upon reaching 100, the game will happily announce
Adrenaline full.
in a very dramatic manner, at which point you're free to activate it in a number of different ways. There are a total of 4 uses for adrenaline in Unreal Tournament 2004, and they're activated by pressing a certain set of keys in a set configuration. For example, rapidly pressing W 4 times will give you a boost to your speed, making you even harder to hit. Rapidly hitting the S key instead will activate rapid Wolverine-esque healing. These wear out fairly quickly, so the player is incentivized to time the activation and implementation of these adrenaline powers carefully. If you die whilst it's activated, well then that's just too bad. Of course, upon the occasion of your spawning or respawning into one of Unreal Tournament 2004's countless levels, your primary objective will be to find the biggest, bestest weapon possible in the fastest amount of time. In that regard, 2004 has you covered. There's an extensive arsenal of different weaponry, from the shotgun-like flak cannon, to the shock rifle, to the super secret bonus weapon which can be found hidden on several different levels, the Redeemer. Thankfully, unlike many protagonists in first-person shooters, Unreal Tournament 2004 lets you pick up as many different weapons at one time as you need, and switching between them is super easy. The lightest flick of the mouse wheel, or a press of the 1 to 0 keys on your keyboard, will have your character rapidly chucking whatever they're wielding back into their Mary Poppins-esque pocket and pulling out something else. Sometimes you'll forget to keep account of your ammo. Sometimes you'll be in a close quarter fight with the flak cannon, where sometimes you'll run out of ammo and the game will automatically switch you to the crappy starter gun instead of your spare rocket launcher whilst the enemy is still all up in your face. Sometimes you'll die. I've spoken at length about the moment-to-moment gameplay now, but perhaps you are wondering just why exactly I chose Unreal Tournament 2004 in particular, being the second game of 3. Generally, I think it's pretty rare for the middle child of a trilogy to be its best offering, but I do think that is the case here. I say this having literal overflowing bucket loads of nostalgia for the first game, and actually rather liking the third, which I appreciate is a controversial opinion. What sets 2004 aside to me as the best one is gameplay. Unreal Tournament 2004 is a game that is literally old enough to drink in the United Kingdom, but plays as smoothly and as pleasantly as a game a tenth its age. What keeps old school arena shooters such as Unreal Tournament 2004 so exciting decades later, in my opinion, is the fact that there's never any downtime. You'll never have to crouch behind a wall, waiting for your health to come back, or crouch behind a wall, peeping out to take potshots at the fella over there, popping his head up from behind the wall, like some higher stakes version of whack-a-mole. In the arena shooter genre, the player must constantly keep moving, scouring levels for enemies, item drops, and a bigger, better arsenal. Unreal Tournament 2004 even has additional game modes like Onslaught, which features heavy vehicular combat. For the purposes of this review, I went back and played not only Unreal Tournament 2004, but also Unreal Tournament and Unreal Tournament 3. 2004 beats out its prequel in terms of how it's continued to age, considering how tight and responsive the gameplay still feels these days, and beats out its sequel because of the sheer scale of its qualitative quantity. Just in my research and extensive time playing 2004, I discovered so many new modes and maps that I'd never bothered to try before. There's literally an assault map which revolves around ensuring that a brewery in the outback is able to supply its local pub, giving off heavy Team Fortress 2 vibes. I never knew it was there until, at the time of writing this, yesterday, and at the time of reading this, like a week ago. Not to mention the seemingly infinite amount of custom/modded content that can be downloaded online. It's my understanding that as Epic Games shuts down the multiplayer servers for the series, it's pulling them from storefronts too. As I write, I can't see it on Steam, but I can on GOG. I implore you to pick up these games before they're seemingly gone for good. One day I hope that these big gaming companies realise that their old back catalogues aren't something to be locked away after a set amount of time, but instead something to be celebrated and presented as an essential part in the annals of gaming history. Good Old Games is literally a storefront designed for those sorts of games, so the notion that they could disappear from there too in the coming weeks is utterly nonsensical. Protect your old games, people. They won't be available forever. In the meantime, I believe that wraps everything up in regards to Unreal Tournament 2004. Thank you for taking the time to have a mosey through the game with me. I had a great time breaking it out again for the purposes of this review. Join me next time, where I'll be looking at a different game. A game which dares to pose the immortal question: if a man never eats a pork bun, is he truly a whole man? Hello. So you've reached the end of the review, having a mosey through Unreal Tournament 2004. Thank you very much. This was my first attempt at doing something like this. I've written a few of these. This is actually the fourth. There are 3 more on my blog, a link to which I will provide on screen and or in the description. I don't know, I'll figure something out. So parts 1 to 3 are having a mosey through Dragon Quest 1, having a mosey through Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast, and having a mosey through Fable Anniversary. I do plan to make videos for those as well at some point. They're going to sort of slot in between otherwise monthly releases that I'm looking to do. I have like a full plan of like a game per month for the next 2 years, and then I'll try and fit those 3 in somewhere as well, but they can be read right now on my blog. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know there's some issues with it here and there. I recorded it when I was full of a cold, and I think I do sound better now, thankfully. This is what I sound like normally. I am in possession of rather a large nose, you see, and so when I do come down with colds, I tend to come down with them quite strongly, and yeah, it just takes over everything. But it was also my first time using OBS Studios, and like I think there's some issues with like the aspect ratio. Some clips have black bars on the left side, some of it on the right, and I didn't even notice as I was recording it. But I do now. I know it now, so you know that won't happen again. Oh, in other news, I've also set up a coffee page, so you can support me that way, should you feel so inclined. You can also find me on Mastodon. That's where I tend to post otherwise, as well as, of course, my blog, Chris Powell's Ramblings, where I'll be just... I do a lot of video game writing on there, but I do also tend to occasionally put life updates or like a bit of satire if I'm feeling particularly funny that day. I'm not sure what I'm going to put on in the background for this segment. I think it'll just be some leftover Unreal Tournament 3 footage that I got because I recorded a bunch of it thinking I'd use way more of it, and then I didn't, because this has all been brilliantly planned and executed from the beginning. So yeah, I think I'll just use that. But I think that honestly covers everything. I'm sure I'll think of 3 other things as soon as I hit stop. But there we are. This will do for now. So yeah, thank you very much, guys. Expect another Having a Mosey review towards the end of January. Um, that's when you can hopefully expect it, assuming I can keep to my schedule. But yeah, thank you very much, guys, and I will see you next time.